The first scream came over the radio, not through the skies. Captain Aiden Cross sat inside the cockpit of his A-10 Thunderbolt, the engines rumbling as dawn cracked over the Sierra Nevada mountain range. He had flown countless missions during his service, but this time the battlefield wasn't over foreign soil, it was right above his own homeland. The voice crackling through the comms was frantic, incoherent at first, until the words became horrifyingly clear. Mayday. They're everywhere. They're inside the base. Command is gone. Silence. It wasn't static. It was death. Aiden's eyes flicked to the control tower. No signal lights. No ground crew. Edwards Air Force Base, once the heart of the Western Air Defense, was now quiet, too quiet. Below the hangars were still. No motion. No movement. Just wind and the faint echo of distant gunfire far off on the horizon. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. He reached for the squadron comms. Reaper lead to all birds, report in. Reaper 2 copy, came the calm voice of Lieutenant Tasha Vega, his wingwoman. I've got visual. Base perimeter is compromised. Motion, all around the eastern fence. Aiden's eyes narrowed. How many? There was a pause. Too many to count. That phrase had become all too common in recent days. The virus had spread faster than the military could respond. Cities fell within days. Military command fragmented. Communications died out. Rumors filled the gaps, of reanimated corpses, of entire battalions consumed by hordes of the undead. But the Air Force had held on. At least until now. Reaper Squadron was one of the last fully operational units. 10 elite pilots. 10 jets. Still armed. Still airborne. And still loyal to their oath, to defend what remained of the United States from all threats, even if those threats used to be human. Reaper 3, you there? Aiden asked. Silence. Then static, followed by a chilling sound. Not a voice. A moan. Slow. Broken. Gurgling. Tasha, Reaper 3 is gone, he said grimly. Pull back. All jets form up north. We're not landing. From above, the view was surreal. The airbase below now crawled with shadows. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of infected figures limping across the tarmac like ants. They moved toward the hangars, toward the tower, and toward the runway. One of the figures broke into a sprint, inhumanly fast, chasing a lone survivor in a flight suit. The chase ended brutally. The body never got back up. Aiden clenched his jaw. They're swarming the runway. If we had landed, we'd be dead, Tasha finished. Another voice crackled in, Major Quinn, the senior officer and tactical commander. All aircraft redirect to Grid Charlie 7. We're regrouping near an old airstrip at Ridgefield. I've got survivors incoming. Civilians. Refugees from LA. We need to escort their convoy. Aiden frowned. Wait, we're pulling out? What about the base? Quinn didn't hesitate. It's lost. The ground is gone, Cross. But the skies are still ours. We hold the skies or humanity falls. Simple. Brutal. Clear. Aiden looked once more at the base that had been his home for 10 years. It was no longer theirs. It belonged to the dead now. He angled his jet northwest and pushed the throttle. As Reaper Squadron soared away from the carnage, the radio erupted with new chatter, survivors requesting air support from all across the dead zone. A supply drop under siege in Sacramento. A refugee camp breached near Barstow. The frequency buzzed with desperation. Quinn returned on the line, voice hard. Command's gone, but our mission's still alive. We're the last shield. The last storm. If we don't hold the skies, no one will. Understood. Understood, came the voices, one after the other. Aiden breathed deep, steel settling into his voice. Then let's give them hell from above. As they approached Ridgefield, the sky ahead filled with smoke. Plumes rising from the highway, where wrecked civilian vehicles formed a desperate barricade. He could already spot the convoy, school buses, trucks, a single fuel tanker. And around them, movement. Not human. The dead were coming fast. Targets inbound, Tasha said. Permission to engage? Aiden flipped the weapon switch. Permission granted. The battle for the skies had begun. And Reaper Squadron was ready to write its name in fire and steel. The convoy was pinned down on Highway 395. A trail of smoke curled into the air as Reaper Squadron flew low over Ridgefield, the blades of fire licking the edges of shattered asphalt below. From above, Captain Aiden Cross could see the chaos unfolding. Rusted-out cars formed a crude blockade, behind which a scattered group of survivors fired frantically at the oncoming undead. It was a losing fight. The infected were closing in from every angle. Reaper lead to command, we've got visual. Convoy under siege. Engaging now, Aiden called into the mic. Major Quinn's voice snapped back through the comms. Copy, Reaper lead. Prioritize the eastern flank, that's where they're breaking through. Do not let them breach the tanker. That fuel is the only supply we've got to get them out. Tasha Vega flying off Aiden's wing dove first. Her jet banked hard, screaming over the battlefield. The hum of her Gu-8 Avenger cannon roared to life, and then the ground below erupted. A cluster of infected were torn to pieces in a shower of dust, limbs, and earth. Nice shot, Aiden muttered, leveling off for his run. He aimed for the rear of the horde. His finger tapped the trigger. Brrr. A long burst shredded the asphalt and the group of undead trying to climb atop an overturned bus. The survivors behind it cheered, barely audible through the roar of engines and gunfire. But there was no time to celebrate. Reaper 5, I've got movement near the bridge, said Vega. Reaper 5, Lieutenant Damon Holt, banked west, cutting low across a skeletal railway line. Visual confirmed. They're trying to cross on the overpass. Aiden checked his display. If they get past that bridge, they'll flank the convoy. Hit it. Holt's jet released a precision missile. It struck the center of the bridge with a thunderous boom, collapsing concrete and undead alike in a burst of fire and dust. The twisted screech of rebar echoed like a final warning. The sky was full of smoke trails and jet thunder, but on the ground the survivors still fought. Makeshift militias, old cops, even kids with hunting rifles. Aiden watched one teenage boy climb on top of a semi and toss a Molotov at a swarm trying to breach the back of a bus. The explosion engulfed the creatures, and him, in fire. God, Tasha whispered, watching it happen. Aiden forced himself to stay focused. Protect what's left. That's the mission. From the back of the convoy, a survivor clicked on their emergency transmitter. A flicker of digital life bloomed on Aiden's screen, a signal broadcasting from inside the last bus. Reaper lead, said Quinn. We just got a message from the civilian frequency. They're reporting a new threat. Fast ones. Aiden stiffened. Fast ones. Runners? Tasha cut in. The second wave. We've seen them before near Salt Lake. Smart. Quick. Some of them climb. Before he could respond, they saw them, sprinting full speed out of the tree line north of the highway. Maybe 20 of them, bounding over cars, weaving between wrecks like they had muscle memory left. One leapt onto the roof of the bus. Tasha. Aiden shouted. Take the top. She dove again, this time nearly vertical. Her cannon barked, sending heavy rounds slamming into the sprinting monsters. The one on the roof exploded in a flash of blood and sinew. But another was already scaling the tanker truck. No, 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 Aiden muttered, banking sharply. That thing ignites and we lose everything. He had no angle. Nothing clean. Then Reaper 6, Lieutenant Gene Park, cut across his field, firing a cluster of airburst shells. They detonated just above the truck, knocking the creature clear off without triggering the fuel inside. You owe me one, Gene said coolly over the radio. I'll buy you a beer if there's still a world left to drink in, Aiden replied. Below, the horde was thinning. Burned corpses littered the highway. Survivors started waving, their gunfire slowing. The last bus began to move, pushing through the wreckage with a rumble of desperate engines. Convoy is mobile, Tasha confirmed. Looks like we gave them an opening. Aiden nodded. Then let's clear the road ahead. Reaper Squadron soared forward, strafing the path north of the highway. What little resistance remained was crushed under the weight of superior firepower. By the time the sun reached its peak, the convoy had made it out, scarred, shaken, but alive. Ridgefield extraction complete, Quinn radioed. Next stop is Sierra Watchpoint. 30 miles north. If we hold that hilltop airfield, we might just have a chance. Aiden exhaled and looked out over the mountains ahead. The war wasn't over. Not even close. But the skies still belonged to them. 30 miles north of Ridgefield, nestled between steep forested ridges, stood the remnants of Sierra Watchpoint, an old Cold War-era radar base that had long been abandoned, repurposed only weeks ago as a last-ditch airfield for the surviving squadrons and refugee operations. Now it was the convoy's only hope. Captain Aiden Cross circled high above the base with Reaper Squadron fanned out in formation. The hilltop was surrounded by chain-link fencing, portable towers with spotlights, and hastily constructed bunkers of sandbags and steel plates. Below, a line of soldiers and militia volunteers were preparing the ground defenses. Reaper lead to command, Aiden called. We've got eyes on the hill. No movement in the perimeter. Repeat, Watchpoint appears secure for now. Major Quinn's voice came back, sharp and direct. Understood. Get the civilians on the ground. You'll escort the next supply drop as soon as wheels hit the dirt. Copy that. Tasha Vega's voice chimed in. You really think this place can hold, Captain? Aiden didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the tree line to the east. It was too quiet. Not peaceful, quiet in the wrong kind of way. Like the calm before a storm. I think, he finally said, this hill is the last flat land left in the region. If we don't hold it, we lose air support, supply drops, everything. So yeah, we make it hold. The convoy reached the winding dirt road that led up the slope. At the front, the fuel tanker groaned under the weight of its load, wheels kicking up dust. Behind it came the buses, armored pickup trucks, and even a few motorcycles. Dozens of survivors clung to every vehicle, their eyes wide, weapons ready, hearts pounding. Reaper lead, Quinn said again, more urgent this time. We just intercepted a distress beacon, 5 clicks east of your location. It's a medical evac chopper, downed. 2 survivors on board. Pilots injured. They say they're surrounded. Aiden's heart sank. Every mission was now a gamble. Every detour a potential death sentence. But they couldn't ignore it. We'll go, he said. Reaper 2 and 6 with me. The rest of the squadron stays to provide air cover for the hill. Tasha and Lieutenant Jean Park peeled off with him, angling east. Below them, the trees thickened into deep forest, shadows weaving between the branches. Smoke trailed into the sky in the distance, the chopper's wreckage. As they approached, Aiden spotted it, a UH-60 Black Hawk, tail twisted, nose buried into the slope. 2 figures huddled beside the wreckage, barely visible behind makeshift barricades of broken rotor blades and foliage. One waved a flare. The other held a rifle, firing wildly into the tree line. Aiden keyed his mic. I see them. Looks like they've got about 30 inbound from the northeast. Runners. Moving fast. Let's not give them the chance to get close, Tasha said. Her jet let loose a quick burst from her autocannon, tearing a line through the trees. The rounds sliced through the front ranks of the undead, reducing them to crimson shadows. Jean dropped flares and followed with a small payload of cluster munitions, tearing up the forest floor with a series of thunderous cracks. Aiden followed up with a precision strike, targeting a second wave coming from behind the crash site. The shells struck true, sending the undead flying through the air in grotesque arcs. Dirt and smoke filled the air. Landing zone is clear, mostly, Jean reported. But those 2 can't climb up to us. They won't have to, Aiden said. I'm calling in dust off. He switched to the emergency line and hailed one of the last operating medevac units, a refurbished cargo tilt rotor sitting idle at Sierra Watchpoint. Within minutes, the whir of rotor blades filled the air again. AV-22 Osprey dipped low over the treetops, descending fast toward the injured pilot and medic. Aiden and his team held the perimeter with sweeping fire, picking off anything that moved. Pickup successful, came the Osprey pilot's voice. Returning to base. Good work, Aiden replied. Let's regroup. As they turned back toward Sierra Watchpoint, the light of dusk painted the sky in hues of blood red and charcoal gray. From this altitude, Aiden could see the hilltop, now swarming with activity. Sandbag walls going higher. Mortars being loaded. Survivors being herded into underground shelters. But something else caught his eye. Movement. In the valley below, not dozens, but hundreds. A wall of the dead, silently gathering beneath the trees. Unmoving. Watching. Waiting. Tasha, you seeing this? Aiden asked, his voice tight. She zoomed in with her HUD. Yeah. And I don't like it. Neither do I, he muttered. Sierra Watchpoint was no longer just a haven. It had become a target. Darkness settled like a curtain over Sierra Watchpoint. The ridge winds whispered through the pine trees, and the hum of distant crickets felt like a mocking lullaby before the storm. Captain Aiden Cross stood beside his A-10 Thunderbolt, helmet tucked under one arm, eyes scanning the valley below. Floodlights cast harsh white beams down the hillside. In their reach, soldiers readied tripwires, lit up watchtowers, and loaded what little artillery remained. Behind the barricades, civilians huddled in bunkers or slept uneasily in makeshift shelters. Still nothing from the east line? Aiden asked, stepping toward Major Quinn, who stood beside the tactical display table near the command trailer. Quinn shook his head, jaw tight. Not yet. But we know they're down there. They're waiting for something. Maybe for us to let our guard down. Aiden frowned. Zombies don't wait. Not unless something's controlling the flow. We've seen this pattern before, Barstow then Red Bluff. The bigger hordes? They move like they have a brain behind them. Quinn didn't respond. but the weight in his silence spoke volumes. Over the radio, Lieutenant Tasha Vega's voice broke in. Reaper 2 reporting. I've got heat signatures moving on the eastern ridge. Lots of them. No vehicles, just movement. Tight formation. How many? Aiden asked, snapping to attention. Hundreds, she said. And they're heading straight for us. Sirens wailed through the camp. Red strobes flashed across the perimeter. The ground crew rushed toward aircraft, and defenders climbed to the battlements. The stillness was shattered. All right, Aiden barked. All Reaper units scramble. I want air up in 2 minutes. This is it. Engines screamed to life across the airstrip as Reaper Squadron roared toward the sky. From above, the valley was no longer empty. Shadows surged forward, not in a disorderly swarm but in terrifying ranks. The undead flooded over the trees like a living tide. Aiden's breath caught in his throat. They're organized. Gene Park's voice rang in. That's a war charge, not a panic run. Engage on sight, Aiden ordered. Full payload. Reaper Squadron opened fire. Vulcan cannons lit the night, streaking tracer fire into the valley. The lead ranks of undead exploded into bursts of gore and dust. Cluster bombs fell like deadly rain, shaking the ground with thunder. But still they came. The undead climbed over the bodies of the fallen. Some crawled with broken limbs, jaws gnashing. Others, faster, smarter, veered around traps and breached outer barricades. Left flanks compromised, shouted a soldier on the ground. We need air support, now. Tasha dove low, her A-10 skimming just over the treetops. Her strafing run cleared a breach by the south fence, cutting down dozens of undead within seconds. The ground troops pushed forward, sealing the gap behind her with firebombs and razor wire. Aiden spotted something unusual, a tall figure moving near the back of the horde. Not sprinting like the others. Not shambling. Commanding. Eyes on a new type, Aiden said. Possible alpha. Near the treeline. It's just standing there. Before he could lock on, it disappeared into the mass. The fight surged into the midnight hours. The undead never stopped. They attacked in waves, first fast runners, then brute types with bulging limbs that tore through barricades, and then small nimble infected that scaled watchtowers like spiders. A Reaper ground mechanic screamed as one dropped from the sky, having latched onto a drone and ridden it down. Inside the command bunker, Quinn directed mortars and artillery. We can't hold like this. We'll be overrun by dawn if they keep coming. Aiden pulled his squadron back into a tight strike loop. Target the source. We need to break their formation. Create a bottleneck. He launched 2 precision missiles into the narrow ravine from where the undead continued to spill forward. The explosions collapsed rock walls, crushing dozens and halting the reinforcements momentarily. Cheers erupted from the defenders below. But the victory was short-lived. We've got movement, North Gate, a voice shouted. They're coming from the other side now. Tasha swore. They flanked us. How do they know our weak spots? Aiden gritted his teeth. They're learning. Reaper jets redirected again, slamming firepower into the North Pass. But they were low on ammo. And fatigue was beginning to wear them thin. Then a low rumble echoed through the hills. Not undead. Not gunfire. Engines. Quinn's radio burst to life. Unknown aircraft approaching from the west. IFF tags not responding. They're military but unregistered. Aiden blinked. Reinforcements. No, Quinn said. They're not broadcasting any signal. And they're not answering hails. The lights of 4 helicopters blinked through the smoke. Then, spotlights turned on, illuminating the battlefield. And they dropped something. Not supplies. Bodies. Aiden's voice caught in his throat. What the hell are they doing? The sky rained the infected. The enemy had taken to the air. They dropped like cargo. Like forgotten baggage from the sky. From the moment the unmarked helicopters released their payload, everything changed. Dozens of undead, bound in harnesses rigged to release midair, plummeted through the smoke, crashing onto rooftops, guard towers, and directly into the heart of Sierra Watchpoint. Captain Aiden Cross watched in disbelief from his cockpit. They're airdropping the infected? Who the hell is doing this? Whoever they are, Lieutenant Tasha Vega growled over comms, they know exactly where to hit us. We've lost the upper hand. Below, chaos erupted. One of the creatures landed on the command bunker roof, smashing through reinforced metal like a hammer through plywood. Inside, alarms wailed. Quinn's voice was a shout over static. Command post compromised. We need support at grid sector Echo 1. Reaper 4 and 5 handle Echo 1, Aiden snapped. Everyone else target the choppers. We take them down now or the base falls. Reaper Squadron peeled off, engines howling. The helicopters, all black, military-grade, likely stolen or repurposed, hovered like vultures above the hilltop. They made no attempts to evade, no counterfire. Just mechanical carriers of death. Gene Park locked on to the lead chopper. Target acquired. Firing Fox 2. His missile streaked skyward and struck true. The helicopter spun out of control, flames trailing, before it smashed into the eastern ridge in a blossom of fire. "That's one," Park muttered. Aiden aimed at the next, weaving between tracer rounds from the base's ground defenses. Engaging second bird. His cannon roared, rounds tearing into the chopper's side. It tilted, rotor damaged, dumping its final load of infected before veering into a nearby radio tower and exploding on impact. But the damage had been done. More than 50 infected now clawed through the base from within the perimeter. These weren't shamblers, they were enhanced. Quicker, aggressive, and coordinated. Ground teams were being overrun in pockets. One section of the outer wall collapsed under sheer weight as Undead pushed a fuel truck against it until it tipped and exploded. Aiden's comms lit up again. "This is Corporal Reyes on the north line. They've breached the hangar. We can't hold." Static. Another voice cut in, barely above a whisper. "They're not just attacking, they're hunting us." Tasha dove low over the base, targeting the hangar. "I see movement, lots of it. They're dragging people away. Dragging, not devouring." That was new. That was worse. Aiden's gut clenched. Why aren't they killing everyone on sight? No one answered. Down below, Major Quinn reappeared in the open, limping, his uniform torn. He waved a flare, signaling the control tower. The backup generators whined to life, flooding the base in pale light. It gave the defenders a few moments to regroup. Reaper jets circled again, providing close air support, their ammunition dwindling with each pass. Then, just when the momentum seemed to swing back, the final helicopter made its move. It didn't release the infected. It landed. A strange figure stepped out. Tall, masked, armored in patchwork military gear, not infected but not entirely human either. The figure walked calmly through the chaos, flanked by two sprinting undead who ignored the defenders around them. From Aiden's altitude, he could barely make out the symbol on the back of the figure's jacket. A faded red skull with wings, the insignia of Unit Seraph, a rumored rogue military faction believed to be experimenting with controlling the infected. "Command, this is Reaper Lead," Aiden said urgently. "We've got a hostile actor on the field. Not undead. I repeat, not undead." Quinn's voice came back grim. "Confirmed. We've heard whispers of them before. Rogue tech, biological control systems. Weaponizing the outbreak." Aiden stared hard as the figure moved through the battle untouched. "Then we just found the one steering the horde. The enemy wasn't just mindless anymore. It had a brain, a strategy, a face." Reaper Squadron had no choice. "We go dark," Aiden said. "No more radio chatter unless critical. We can't let them trace our patterns. Tasha, Park, cover the southern fallback zone. We're getting the civilians out of here." "But what about the stronghold?" Tasha asked. "It's lost," Aiden replied, voice steady. "This war just changed." Quinn's final order echoed over the channel. "Evacuate the wounded. Secure the survivors. Get them to Skyhook Station. We regroup from there. Sierra Watchpoint has fallen." As the jets roared away into the night sky, smoke billowed behind them, and the firelight revealed a battlefield drowned in horror and betrayal. The undead weren't the only enemy anymore. Now the war had two fronts. The sky behind them burned. Sierra Watchpoint, once the last stronghold of hope in the western dead zones, was now a crater of flame and screams. Captain Aiden Cross led Reaper Squadron through the ash-choked skies, flying low beneath radar range with their fuel reserves blinking dangerously low. Behind them, a battered convoy of survivors, half-broken buses, military transports, and a few reconfigured civilian trucks, rumbled along a winding mountain road toward their last known safe zone, Skyhook Station. It was never meant to house this many people. Originally a refueling and radar outpost carved into the cliffs of Mount Morrison, Skyhook had been hastily fortified as the infected swept across the valleys. Most of the top brass had written it off, too small, too remote. But now it was all that remained. "This is Reaper Lead to Skyhook Control," Aiden radioed. "Inbound with survivors. We've got heavy wounded and critically low air support. Prepare your landing zones and defensive positions. The dead are in pursuit." There was a moment of static. Then a voice broke through, gruff but calm. Skyhook control copies. Landing pads are lit. Medical crews on standby. But Captain, you're not going to like what we've got waiting here. What kind of what? Tasha Vega asked warily from the cockpit of Reaper 2. We'll let you see it for yourself, came the cryptic reply. The jets banked left around the final ridge. There, rising from the rocks like a fortress grown out of the mountain itself, was Skyhook. Radar dishes glinted under moonlight. Spotlights swept the nearby cliffs. The convoy below trailed toward it like ants returning to a hill, exhausted, half-broken but alive. Then Aiden saw it, a massive black aircraft parked along the southern platform. Sleek, unmarked, and clearly not military issue. It wasn't a transport. It was a modified stealth cargo jet. That's not ours, Park said from Reaper 6. You seeing that lead? I see it, Aiden replied. And I don't like it. As the jets touched down one by one, Aiden leapt from his cockpit and was immediately met by Lieutenant Commander Elara Briggs, Skyhook's hard-nosed operations officer. She didn't salute. We've got a problem. Yeah, we brought plenty with us, Aiden shot back. She jerked her head toward the mysterious aircraft. That bird landed here 6 hours ago. Claimed they were with a coalition research unit out of Denver. But they refused to show ID. Said their cargo was classified. We've had our guns trained on them since they arrived, but they're calm. Too calm. And you let them stay? Tasha asked, stepping beside Aiden. Briggs shrugged. We don't exactly have the luxury of turning away armed visitors anymore. From the cargo ramp of the jet, 4 figures emerged, tall, uniformed in dark gear, faces hidden behind opaque helmets. At their center, a figure in a lab coat walked with purpose. A civilian. Or at least pretending to be one. I'm Dr. Elias Corin, he called out. We're here on orders from the Coalition Medical Initiative. We're transporting specimens and data that could help end the outbreak. We require access to your comms array and biocontainment. No chance, Aiden said flatly. Last time someone brought specimens, we lost a whole base. Dr. Corin didn't flinch. You'll lose more if we don't finish our work. Then came a scream. From one of the transport trucks at the base of the platform, a survivor stumbled out, soaked in blood, eyes wild. They're coming. They're in the hills. They followed us. Aiden didn't hesitate. All personnel to defensive positions. Lock down Skyhook, now. Alarms blared. Soldiers scrambled into machine gun nests. Reaper Squadron began rearming with whatever munitions Skyhook had left. It wasn't much. Then the first sound reached them. Not a growl. Not a scream. But chanting. Oh, rhythmic. Garbled. Dozens of voices. Then hundreds. Aiden ran to the ridge wall and looked through binoculars. What he saw made his blood turn cold. A wave of undead, yes, but not just the mindless horde. These moved in unison. Like infantry. Some wore scavenged gear. Some had helmets. One even held a tattered flag painted with a red skull and wings. Unit Seraph again. This is a siege, Tasha whispered beside him. They've turned the infected into soldiers. No, Aiden said grimly. They turned them into a weapon. Behind him, the stealth jet's engines began to hum. Dr. Corin's team was preparing to leave. Where do you think you're going? Briggs shouted. To finish our mission, Corin replied. This place is already lost. You're not taking off with whatever's in that plane. Aiden yelled, raising his weapon. But the undead were already at the gates. There was no time left. The siege had begun. They came like a tide. At 3:14 hours, the outer floodlights of Skyhook Station flickered once, then stayed lit, revealing the first wave of undead pouring from the treeline. But these weren't the clumsy, disorganized biters of earlier days. These moved in lines. In squads. Some carried crude riot shields and rebar spears. They used wrecked vehicles and debris as cover. And at their back, standing atop a rusted-over APC, was the masked commander Aiden Cross had seen at Sierra Watchpoint, the one with the red-winged skull across his chest. The one controlling Unit Seraph's army. Captain Cross gritted his teeth from atop the western wall. They've studied us. Learned from every battle. Tasha Vega loaded another drum into the autocannon beside him. They've learned our weaknesses. Then we changed the game. Alarms screamed across Skyhook Station. Civilians were herded into underground bunkers while every available soldier, militia fighter, and pilot took up a weapon. Floodlights rotated, illuminating a defensive wall of sandbags, rusted metal, and mounted guns. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning for breaches. Aiden's A-10 Thunderbolt sat on the pad behind him, ready but nearly out of fuel and down to its last belt of armor-piercing rounds. "We've got infected scaling the southern cliff," came a shout over comms. "They're using each other as ladders." Explosions rocked the rock face as defenders hurled grenades and makeshift napalm. Still the undead climbed. Aiden keyed into command frequency. "Quinn, what's our fallback plan?" Major Quinn's voice was strained. "There isn't one. We hold this hill or there's nothing left to hold tomorrow." Behind the ridge, the black stealth jet began spooling up again. Dr. Elias Corrin and his masked team of rogue operatives were loading a steel container into its belly. The container pulsed with a dull green glow. Aiden shouted into his comm, "You're not leaving with that cargo, Corrin." "What's in that box?" Corrin's voice was cool and calm. "A prototype control strain. Synthetic neural code, capable of suppressing the infected's base instincts. We believe it can turn them docile." "You've already seen what it does," Aiden snapped. "This strain isn't pacifying them, it's organizing them." Corrin didn't respond. From the ridgeline, fire opened up. RPGs streaked through the sky, hammering the walls. The undead surged, screeching, howling, and chanting. Again that low rhythmic drone filled the air. Ah. It was the sound of brainwashing. Of control. "They're not undead," Tasha whispered. "They're soldiers under command." Unit Seraph had crossed a line. And now the price would be paid in blood. Aiden slammed a magazine into his rifle and raised it. "Reaper Squadron, we hold the wall. No matter what." Gene Park took position with a rocket launcher on the northern slope. "Copy that. Let's give them hell." The siege began in full. Wave after wave slammed into Skyhook's perimeter. Dozens of defenders fell, but for every one lost, 10 infected were cut down. Molotovs, claymores, drone strikes, everything was thrown at them. The air reeked of gasoline, smoke, and burning flesh. Tasha spotted the enemy commander, still watching, unmoving, unflinching. "He's not even fighting," she said. "He's observing." "Not anymore," Aiden growled. He bolted toward his aircraft. "What are you doing?" she called. "Ending this." With Quinn's reluctant permission, Aiden powered up his A-10, the last active jet on the ridge. The engines roared to life, kicking dust and debris across the landing pad. He took off into the smoke-choked sky, making a tight loop toward the battlefield. From above he saw it clearly. The command node. A mobile relay truck, armored and covered in strange antennae, parked behind enemy lines. Signals pulsed from it, signals likely controlling the entire horde. "Target acquired," Aiden whispered. "Time to cut the cord." He dove fast, hugging the ridgeline, hugging radar shadow. Anti-air fire traced past his wings. One lucky shot clipped his tail. The warning lights screamed at him. He didn't stop. He armed his last Maverick missile. "Goodbye," he muttered and fired. The missile struck the relay truck dead center. The explosion tore through the ranks of the horde like a thunderclap. The commander atop the APC staggered, visibly shaken for the first time. Sparks erupted from his gear. And suddenly, the chanting stopped. All across the hillside the undead froze. Then stumbled. Then turned on each other. The spell was broken. At Skyhook, cheers broke through the smoke. Tasha raised her rifle high, grinning for the first time in days. "He did it." Aiden's voice crackled in over comms, weak but alive. "Target neutralized. Returning, with one wing and a prayer." Skyhook had survived the siege. But Unit Seraph hadn't been defeated, only wounded. And the war wasn't over. The sun finally rose. Smoke still hung over the ravaged cliffs of Skyhook Station, but for the first time in weeks, the light wasn't blocked by ash or fear. It poured down on a battered but standing fortress, and the scattered remains of a broken horde below. Captain Aiden Cross limped across the landing pad, his flight suit charred, his left arm wrapped in a bloodied sling. His A-10 Thunderbolt lay just beyond the runway, its nose buried in rock, fuselage shredded, but its mission complete. He had made it back. Barely. Around him, survivors and soldiers cleared wreckage, extinguished fires, and loaded the wounded onto stretchers. Others walked in silence, still in shock. The bodies of infected, some still twitching with residual neural pulses, littered the outer perimeter. "Captain Cross," called a voice behind him. He turned to see Lieutenant Commander Elara Briggs approaching, her helmet tucked under one arm, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion. "You grounded your plane in a crater, took out their command link and stalled a siege with one missile," she said. "I hope you're not planning to do that twice." "I don't have another missile," Aiden replied with a dry smirk. Behind them, Reaper Squadron regrouped near the hangars. Tasha Vega stepped forward, helping Gene park out of a medevac truck, his leg in a splint. Damage report? Aiden asked. Tasha glanced down. 3 jets left, including yours. 2 are barely airworthy. Ammunition's almost 0. But we've still got teeth. He nodded. That would have to be enough. Major Quinn joined the group, face smeared with ash. Intel from the crashed rogue jet confirms what we feared. Unit Seraph was developing strain-controlled infection, weaponized coordination. But that relay truck wasn't their only one. It was just the test run. Aiden frowned. So there are more of them. Likely, Quinn said. And they're mobile. If they can rebuild another network, we'll face the same threat again, or worse. Silence followed. Then Tasha stepped forward. So we take the skies back before they can. Briggs narrowed her eyes. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Aiden looked toward the ruined valley and nodded. A counteroffensive. The map inside the Skyhook command room lit up with every known Seraph movement. Recon drones had begun picking up new signal pings. One, in particular, stood out, a large transmission spike coming from an old weather station built into a mountain ridge just south of what used to be Reno. That's their new hub, Quinn said. It matches the relay's frequency. If they finish constructing that station, they'll re-establish full neural command over the infected in the west. Then we strike first, Aiden said. We don't have an air fleet, Briggs warned. We barely have fuel. We don't need a fleet, Aiden replied. We just need Reapers. Within hours, the remaining jets were patched together with spare parts and grit. Tasha's bird had a cracked HUD. Parks couldn't roll missiles, but it could still fly. Aiden's Thunderbolt had no right being airborne again, but he wasn't asking it for permission. They left Skyhook in the early evening, flying low beneath radar across ghost towns and over collapsed highways. The world below was a scarred graveyard. But above it, the sky still belonged to them. When they reached the Reno Ridge, the target was clear. A converted air traffic control tower surrounded by shipping containers, antennae, and the same type of neural pulse dish used at Sierra Watchpoint. Below, dozens of infected stood perfectly still in defensive formation. And in the center, another commander. Matt. Waiting. They know we're coming, Tasha muttered. They always do, Aiden said. Let's remind them why it doesn't matter. The Reapers dove as one. Autocannons opened fire. Cluster bombs fell. The infected scrambled to respond, but without the relay their coordination was delayed, staggered. The jets tore through them like ghosts, too fast and too deadly. Tasha destroyed the dish. Park launched a missile directly through the tower's heart. And Aiden, his jet trailing black smoke, dropped the last payload on the power core rigged at the site's base. The explosion lit the mountains. As they pulled away, the ridge went dark. The last coordinated signal blinked out. And with it, Unit Seraph's western control net died. The skies fell silent. Back at Skyhook, the news hit like a tidal wave of relief. People cheered. Some cried. Others just stared at the radio in disbelief. Aiden returned hours later, his jet barely staying airborne, and landed in the same crater he'd made before. Tasha met him with a tired smile. You're going to make crashing a habit? He looked around at the survivors, the patched-up base, and the wide-open sky overhead. Not if I can help it. She raised a hand. So, what now? Aiden stared up at the dawn. Now we take back what's left of the world. One sky at a time. End of Part 8, end of audiobook.